Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Beyond Basic AP Automation, EHS's Journey to 75% Time Savings and 5 Times Growth, brought to you by IOFM and sponsored by Automate. We have a few housekeeping notes to go over before we get started. If you need any technical assistance, we first recommend refreshing your browser. If you continue to have technical questions or issues using the On24 platform, please use the Q&A box and I will respond as soon as we can. There will be no call-in number for today's session. To connect, you need to have access to either a computer, tablet, or cell phone audio. Everyone has been muted. So that you don't miss any shared content or an opportunity to share value feedback with us, we recommend you enable pop-ups within your browser. If you happen to get disconnected, you can log on again using the instructions provided in your webinar confirmation email. If you continue to have trouble, please email webinars@iofm.com and we'll respond as soon as we can. For your convenience, everything in the webinar console is fully customizable, so you can move things around, resize the window, and even turn on captions for this event. At the bottom of your console, you will also find a resources box where you can download the slides as well as any additional content for today's presentation. Be prepared to answer 3 polling questions during the webinar. The polls will appear in the slides window during the presentation. Please choose from the multiple choice answers and hit submit. We'd love to have your participation and insight. And again, you can ask questions at any time during the presentation by submitting it through the Q&A box. We'll do our best to leave some time at the end of the session to answer as many questions as time allows. And finally, this webinar will be recorded and you'll receive a thank you email with the on-demand materials within 2 business days. And with that out of the way, I would like to introduce our speakers for today's webinar. We'll hear from Mark Brousseau, President of Brousseau & Associates. Over the past 30 years, Mark has established himself as a thought leader on accounts payable, accounts receivable, payments, and document automation. A popular speaker at industry conferences and on webinars and podcasts, Mark advises prominent end users and solutions and service providers on how to use automation to improve document and payment-driven business processes. Mark has chaired numerous educational conferences and has served on several industry committees and boards. He resides in Center City, Philadelphia with his wife and 3 sons. We'll also hear from Liz Schwartz, founder and CEO of EHS Business Solutions. Liz knows restaurants from the inside out. Before launching EHS Business Solutions, she spent years immersed in the industry, learning firsthand how much creativity, grit, and relentless energy it takes to run a hospitality business. That experience shaped the way she built her woman-owned accounting and advisory firm, with the understanding that restaurant operators don't just need a bookkeeper, they need a true partner who speaks their language. At EHS, Liz and her team go beyond balancing the books. They combine controller and CFO level services with practical tech-forward tools that help owners streamline operations and reclaim their time. Whether she's helping a single neighborhood spot or a multi-unit group, Liz's approach is rooted in turning complex financial data into clear strategies that drive profitability, improve cash flow, and set restaurants up for sustainable growth. And finally, we'll also hear from Don Dittmar, Vice President and Head of Product at Automate. Don has nearly 30 years of experience in finance and product management. He has a proven track record in directing strategy and development of product portfolios and vertical strategies. His background in accounts payable for retail organizations makes him uniquely qualified to drive Automate's overall product direction. At this time, I'd like to welcome our speakers and hand the webinar off to Mark.
Thank you so much, Jovi, and thank you all for joining us today. In a recent study conducted by the Institute of Finance and Management, we found that nearly 3/4 of all AP departments have some level of technology. Now, let's be clear, they're not fully automated. That still remains to be a small percentage of all AP departments, but many of you have something, whether it's an OCR solution or a portal or some other technology. And yet in that same IOFM study, we also found that most AP departments manually handle most of the invoices that they receive from suppliers. Hold on a second here, you're thinking. On one hand, you're telling me that AP departments have been automating. And on the other hand, you're telling me that we're still manually handling most of the invoices we receive. What gives? Well, it's not the technology, it's the approach to automation that in many cases have undone many AP departments. During today's webinar, we're going to show you how one organization was able to eliminate many of the manual tasks that were holding them back, and how you can apply those principles to your organization. But before we do any of that, well, we wanted to start with a poll question, which is now displayed on your screen. I want to know, where is your organization in its AP automation journey? Where is your organization in its AP automation journey? Do you have mostly manual processes? You are a paper pushing machine. Do you have some digital tools, but still lots of manual tasks? Are you put in a significant amount of automation, but you still have some manual exceptions? Or are you living the electronic touch-free dream? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. Don, you and I have been in the automation space for quite a while now. When you look out over the landscape, how well has the industry done in automating its AP processes, and where are the problems and the things holding us back?
Yeah, you said it well, Mark. I think almost every organization has made some effort to automate in some way, but that full, complete end-to-end automation is sometimes a bit of a dream. I think one of the trends that's really interesting for me right now at this time is that even those organizations who might have answered, C or D, we're pretty good. We have a lot of automation, or we're fully automated. There's new tools now. AI has dropped in the last 2 to 3 years, and it's changing the way automation even exists. So even those organizations that may have been what they considered fully automated or significantly automated are looking at the market now and saying, hey, things have changed. There are new things, predictive coding, reinforced learning on human behavior, things that their staff, their accountants are doing in the way they approve or the way they code. And machines can now recognize that and recognize trends in a way. So it might have moved you back to a B or even an A in some ways. So that's an exciting trend because there's great new tools to get further automation. But that to me is what's really changed right at the moment is there's just a new type of tool on the market and available to these organizations. So it's almost a fresh look at automation and what good looks like.
Don, I imagine that most of our attendees are going to tell us that they're somewhere in between. They probably have some technology, but they still either have a lot or at least some manual tasks. They might feel comfortable with that. Well, I've done something, but I would argue that partially automated probably isn't good enough these days. Would you agree with that? And if so, why?
So certainly would agree with that. I think in some cases, if you get partially automated, you introduce some risk in that you may have mixed processes. Some of your vendors or maybe your CapEx are handled manually, but other, maybe OpEx or simpler invoices are automated, and you get kind of this mixed solution that can create some risk. And the holes that invoices used to fall in between desks, maybe if they were paper, now they're process holes. Maybe now there's not the change management that has to happen. Some level of organization at the home office, but maybe distributed locations don't have the same automation tools or even the process to follow them. So I think it can create a risk if you go partially there, and certainly you want to be as close to that holy grail of end-to-end automated as you can be, but it's a continuous journey. You don't get to just sort of stop where you're at. You're always going to have to adopt those new tools and your business process as well. Acquisitions, change of your business that will change that as well. So keeping that focus on it and maximizing it, kind of reduces that risk. Make sure you don't get stuck where you're at.
Liz, you're in the business of helping businesses grow and thrive. How does AP automation factor into that strategy?
Well, Mark, what we have found with our clients is that as we are able to automate their AP processes, it's saving them an enormous amount of time, especially in industry, the restaurant industry, where people are not in front of their computers, as in they are in office environments, and they need to be running their business. And the fact that they have maybe one step now versus 5 steps that they had in the past has been an enormous improvement.
Yeah, Liz, there's a lot of talk these days about economic uncertainty, and I'm not about to tell someone whether we're in for a soft landing or a hard landing or status quo. But the reality is we don't know what could happen next with the economy, and clearly restaurants and hospitality businesses are affected by economic slowdowns. Is this the time for restaurants and other hospitality companies to be taking an assessment of where they are with their back office processes such as AP?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is the best time to be taking a look at those things, because everything, again, the restaurant industry specifically, they call it a pennies business.
Yeah.
And having information at your fingertips is so important. And when we can automate processes and get that data and information into the hands of restaurant operators, it's only going to help them. And information is power. And that's the best way that they're going to be able to navigate through the uncertainty right now.
Are you finding more the operators and business owners are aware of the impact that inefficiencies in AP could have on the overall business, Liz?
Actually, that's something they don't think about. We have to explain. Well, it is because they don't want to think about the accounting processes. They want to run their business. So we are there to point it out to them and let them know that there are things that you may not be thinking about that we can help to automate, make more efficient, so then allow operators to be able to run their business, the entire business, more efficiently and do their jobs.
We need to get you a bigger bullhorn, Liz. So we asked our attendees, where is your organization in its AP automation journey? Look at this, Don. 45% of our attendees said that they've deployed significant automation, but they still have manual exceptions. Another 39% of our attendees have deployed some technology, but they still have a lot of manual processes. 8% of you are still relying on mostly manual processes. Only 7% of you are fully automated, electronic, and processing. Don, it looks like the vast majority of our attendees, 85% of them are somewhere in the middle here, where they've deployed some tools and still have manual tasks. What would be your single biggest piece of advice to them to get them closer to full automation?
Yeah, I think it's one, I'm always an advocate of change management and best practice. If you can't, applying a technology to a broken process is not gonna get you to that full automation, that touchless experience that you're looking at. So they have to be looked at together. Look at your process. Are you cutting enough POs? Do you have an advanced price catalog that you're working against? What's the data you have to validate an invoice flow against, so that you can get to true automation? AI changes that a lot. You can start to look at different things other than just good old three-way matching like used to exist. You can bounce against product catalogs and delivery schedules and things where AI can look a little more abstractly than kind of the old manual matching ways. But that core of focusing on, hey, what's my business process, and then tuning the product to a good business process versus just trying to throw technology at it, that's important. The other thing I would add to that is really, understanding of the organization. And to Liz's point, you want to take away those users, you want to keep those users that are, they're the front of house. In Liz's case, for the restaurant, it could be any business though, where you want to be working on the business, and make those users incorporate them into the product in a way, or into your solution in a way that they're only touching what they need to touch, almost a custom experience for approvers or managers, so that it's very persona based. If you look at a complex AP process, it can be overwhelming. You're a director of some kind at the front of the house and you don't know where this invoice is in its process, you need to have an experience that's just tailored to that role and that persona, and that can help a lot to kind of get you to that end state.
Don, 8% of our attendees say they're relying on mostly manual processes. In many cases, that can be attributed to folks who don't know where to start, or maybe don't know how to convince senior management to let them start. What advice would you give those folks for getting out of the starting gates? Any sage advice for accelerating the escape velocity from paper?
Yeah, sure. Start with data, obviously, and you got to build that business case. But I think there's just a lot of untracked loss and risk in a manual AP process. Mark, you mentioned I used to do this on the customer side. One of the things that tripped me into my first ever, foray into AP automation was we lost an invoice from one of our board members. It doesn't take too much of that to get some pretty hot attention on the AP manager at the time. So, try to quantify that risk. The opportunity cost is very important. What could your accountants be doing? I mean, Liz is a great example here where she's serving a lot of end customers. She's taking away the manual, tedious work to focus on helping these people build their business, on buying better, on operating better. So emphasizing that opportunity cost of AP, if you're doing it manually, it doesn't produce a lot except getting the bills paid. Where could we apply that in our business? Not just the hard costs, but the soft costs. Get that all together into a business case with some numbers, and take that to pitch it to your leaders, and that's how you get, like you said, Mark, off the starting grid.
Liz, I imagine that when you're talking to operators and owners, many of them tell you, I don't know anything about this automation, Liz. I'm in the business of delighting customers and serving up great food. What do I know about automation? What's your message to them when you're talking to them and they're not so sure how to get going with AP automation?
Yes. Well, actually, Mark, we do encounter that. And it's an easy explanation because of how easy it is for them. So for our clients, all they need to worry about is scanning invoices at a very base level. So they don't need to know about automation. They scan the invoices. My team then takes it from there and processes everything from the coding of the invoices, and then the system itself recognizes and automates it. So then the next time an invoice comes in from that particular vendor, it's automatically coded, ready to go. We take care of queuing up payments. So all the operators need to worry about is scanning and approving, and don't need to understand everything behind it. They just need to know they're going to get their information much quicker than they were in the past. And they are not going to have to deal with as much paper as they were in the past. And they're going to have a lot less work on the administrative side of things to do, which is the most important thing in any business where their business is not accounting and finance.
Yeah. I imagine that the automation is critical to you being able to do this all efficiently. Take me back before you automated. What were the challenges you encountered in providing these types of services to your clients? And what was the tipping point that made you say, yeah, we got to find a better way to do this?
Yeah, well, we were the definition of manual process. So our process was we would actually drive around to our clients to pick up invoices. So my company's fully, we were. And a lot of the times it was me.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And, we're a fully remote business. So I have staff, all over the place. And so I would drive around, pick up invoices, sometimes in a grocery bag and not very organized, take them back home or drop them off at one of my staff's homes and manually key in all the data. And one of the things that's, I think, unique to the restaurant industry is you could have an invoice with 100 different line items on it and have 20 different GL accounts that needs to be coded to. Mm-hmm. So then we'd have to get a calculator out and manually add things up if it wasn't already done by the restaurant. So that was I don't have to tell you how time consuming of a process that was.
I can't even imagine. I'm trying to wrap my head around all of this. How many people did we have doing this? And was it their whole day? I mean, was this their job?
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, it was just me. And then once I brought on additional staff, sometimes they would actually go out to the restaurant itself, work on site and do the entry versus taking it back home and bringing it back. But either way, it was definitely something that was taking hours upon hours and just wasteful time. Driving around is not a good use of anybody's time. Manually keying things in is not a good use of anyone's time. Taking that paper, cutting checks, attaching the invoices to the checks, then taking it back to someone to sign the check and then mail the check and then file everything away. It just was an enormous amount. I mean, we would be spending 40 hours a week just doing that, let alone the other work that we should be doing to prepare financial statements and prepare the information. So
doing the advisory work that you're uniquely qualified to do.
Exactly.
That's
and without
be
automation,
frustrating.
there's no way we could have gotten to where we are today. I would not have this business if we weren't able to automate things. It's just not a sustainable business model anwe
What was the breaking point? So when did you say enough is enough here?
Yeah, well, I knew we need to have a better way of doing things. Mm-hmm. I wasn't seeking out the solution. The solution fell into my lap where someone else had seen Automate, which was then called Plate IQ at the restaurant show, and reached out to me and said, Liz, you need to see this. And so I reached out, I scheduled a demo, and I was completely on board with one demo. and obviously there were things we needed to make sure the system did and that had the proper security in place and controls and was cost effective. But I could see forward how it could be a complete game changer for my business and for my clients, and to reduce the amount of time that we were spending on just useless data entry.
What was the feature or features you saw that made you light up to say, okay, this is what I need?
Yes. Well, the scanning for one. Scanning of not having to drive around anymore. That was a big sell. The coding, the automatically coding the invoices, the everything in one place, being able to look things up. So it wasn't just one thing. There were just so many features that we didn't even know we needed. And the benefit of having everything at your fingertips was just incredible.
Talk to me about the reporting. You're in the business of advising these clients. I imagine you in particular, of all our attendees, I mean, you're relying on having those insights. What types of reports are you getting out of this system, and how are you using that to help deliver the types of strategic insights your clients expect you to deliver?
Right. So with this particular system, one of my favorite features is something called a hot list.
Hot list.
And so this system is monitoring cost changes. And again, with restaurants, they're buying perishable product. This costs fluctuate on a daily basis. And to be able to provide that information to our clients real time so that they could then go back to their vendors and either lock in pricing or negotiate or put vendors up against each other to be able to keep their costs in line. That was the big feature. And that's one of the ways that helps us to sell the product to our clients and get buy-in is I just show them the hot list and say, look, you don't have to go through these paper invoices anymore and write the price down and then look at another invoice and check the price. It's all being done there for you. So that's a really big report that we use a lot. And now, the system has been continually improving. So there are many more insights that we are able to see at our fingertips of, what vendors are, most of the money going out to, how much are our clients spending with each vendor? What are they buying? What category are they spending the most money in? And there's just so many different types of analytical reports we can just get out of the system, and new dashboard features that the clients can also look at themselves and have at their fingertips at a moment's notice. So the reporting has been incredible.
It seems to me, Liz, that a lot of those types of reports you just described are the kinds of things that an operator would want, not just somebody who's running the back office of the restaurant. Am I on the right track here? I got to imagine the folks who want those reports from you are moving up the ladder, not down.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's having that information at your fingertips in real time to be able to assess costs. I mean, as I mentioned, the costs are changing every single day. And to be able to know, wait a minute, my limes just doubled in price in the course of one day. And why did that happen? And how can I mitigate that by changing menu items, for example, or portions everything. So to be able to make quick decisions is imperative in the restaurant industry.
Yeah, now everybody's thirsty now that you mentioned lime, so I'm not going to mention what kind of drink we all are envisioning. I know we're all on the same page. I know we are, Don. Don, Liz painted a pretty stark picture of the types of challenges organizations face when they have a manual or semi-automated AP environment. And her example is not unique. It's just maybe at a different scale than many other organizations on the line. What do you find when you walk into many AP departments that haven't fully automated? What are they grappling with these days as challenges? And how has that changed from, say, 5 years ago before we went to this remote work environment?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's the whole spectrum of what Liz described, from just truly manual things to more intelligent planning, budgeting kinds of things. Everything from, simple duplicate payments. In fact, one of the things we like with our customers is we've got both a AI-based statement reconciliation tool and duplicate detection. So, just what does a vendor do when they haven't been paid? They just send the same invoice again, and so there's always that risk of duplication. We're finding fraud today has really surged. You can just go to ChatGPT and say, make me a fake invoice to Liz at EHS Business Solutions, and send it off, and it looks legit. And it may even, you give it a few prompts and it can be very legit. So some of our customers in certain industries have reported 40% increase in fraudulent invoice attempts, especially if you're, a company that makes a lot of payments and there's an opportunity for that to slide in and get paid. We launched an AI-based trust scoring tool. So every invoice that comes in, it has a trust score next to it that tells you what our AI is assessing. Is this risky in any way? Things, kind of at that base level all the way up to, what Liz was describing with, price fluctuations. That's one of the core things we look at with our machine learning engine is we're always watching your prices. And if there's an anomaly, we want to be able to tip you to that. So Liz mentioned the hot list, but we're bringing some things like, prompt, our co-pilot, our interactive chatbot, if you will say, hey, your limes. I like your limes analogy there, Mark. I need a lime myself. I'll just admit that. But those prices have gone up, or maybe they've gone up at store 3 and store 4, but not the others. Why is that? So the ability to surface those data points, budgeting, reporting, cost overages. So what we like to say is that automation lays the groundwork for the intelligence layer. Automation gets the work done, but then once you have that work done, you can start to trend it and pattern it and recognize anomalies in that flow so that you can surface the business impacting data like you guys were describing.
What's the biggest barrier to organizations automating these days, Don? Why don't more organizations achieve full automation?
I think both in my personal experience and with customers, I think it's just the, getting over the hump, the change. Yeah, we've got 42 stores and we have to train 42 managers and people on a new process. And, we've got an AP team that, they've gotten pretty functional. Liz handles A through D and Mark handles, E through G, and we've got a good flow and everything's kind of working. It's just the change. And it is we're not immune from any kind of hype cycle that you would see from Gartner. There's excitement, and then you really do it, and there's kind of this, oh gosh, it's different, and there's this little bit of lapse in excitement, and then you get back to your steady state of where it's valuable. To me, that's the biggest challenge. The other is, integrating. You're always plugging into an ERP, maybe budgeting and planning tools, maybe an operational or inventory system. So integration is tough. Many customers we've probably got customers or prospects on the line here from, QuickBooks all the way to, SAP S4 and everything in between. And so, having that kind of enterprise IT plan, sometimes a little tough. Where does this fit in and what gaps does it fill? To me, those are the barriers, the things that create, some friction in just getting started.
Yeah, let's take a look at the challenges our attendees are facing these days. That brings us to our next poll question, which is now displayed on your screen. This time I want to know, what is your biggest AP challenge today? Which of the following is your biggest AP challenge today? Is it time and resource constraints? Is it error rates and rework? Is it fraud prevention? Is it vendor relationships? Is it cash flow optimization? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. You know, Liz, there's been a lot of talk in recent quarters about the challenging labor market, and you really articulated well that inefficient AP processes can be a time and resource suck. Talk to me about how AP automation can help restaurateurs and other businesses navigate what's a challenging labor market.
Yeah, well, both from my perspective as the owner of the accounting firm, by automating, I don't have to hire as many people to be able to process the same amount of data and reporting and to meet the expectations of all of our clients. It allows each of my staff to be able to take on more clients and to provide more advisory services and spend their time on that. From the client perspective, way back when, restaurants all had office managers on site. That doesn't exist anymore. They're not needed. You know, the management team, the owners can handle the scanning that I had mentioned before, and they just don't need a specific admin position anymore. And that's a big cost savings, both perspectives.
Yeah, scalability is a big benefit of automation, it seems to me, Don. I mean, as Liz suggested, an automated operation allows you to grow your business without having to grow your team. Is this something that you're finding more prospects are keying in on?
100%. We actually track this metric. One of the exciting or interesting things that we have is often, I don't know what the percentage is, but often what triggers a customer to come to us is that they have made an acquisition. So they bought another company, a peer, competitor, whatever it might be, and sort of overnight their chain or their operation has grown 30-40%, and so usually so does their invoice volume. And sometimes that's enough to say we have to scale this. We can't just go bring in 40% more accountants, or we can't bring both teams together. How do we do this? How can we take on a surge in scale for us in terms of our payables, our payments, our vendors, all the overhead that goes with that, vendor setup, onboarding, offboarding. How do we do that with the staff that we have? And then technical automation comes in as one of the answers to that. How do we scale that up? And that can be acquisitions one way to do that, but any form of rapid sudden growth is often an indicator that it's time to automate.
Yeah, and look at this, Don, proving that you have your thumb firmly on the pulse of our industry. We asked our attendees, what is your biggest AP challenge today? 50% of our attendees identified time and resource constraints. Many AP leaders tell me they're constantly being asked to do more with less. 22% of our attendees identified error rates and rework, probably the biggest driver of wasted time and resources. And 13% of our attendees mentioned fraud prevention, which you spoke about a little bit earlier, Don. I guess, Liz, a lot of our attendees are wondering, all right, so it's clear that automation has paid some big dividends to your firm. How hard was it to deploy the solution? What was involved in getting the solution stood up?
It actually was not that difficult at all. And, again, given this was 7 years ago, things are a little bit different now and probably even easier. But the onboarding process for my firm, consisted of, training. There were lots of training videos that walked us through the processes. We built our own SOPs that everyone was trained on. And once my staff saw and got a little taste of it, the adoption was easy. It was very easy. And even now, the process of moving to an automated system for our clients, my firm does all the onboarding. We don't even need to automate the company other than to create the shell of the company. And we're able to do all that onboarding, get things set up, connect everything. train our clients how to use it. It's a very short amount of training. I mean, literally a half an hour, quick training, they get it. And then we may revisit training after there's data in the system to show them all the benefits then that they get out of that with all of the reporting and whatnot. But it was a pretty seamless transition, and I won't lie, there were bugs, but this was back in 2018. So the software was, we were an early adopter. So I feel we were able to help the system improve itself along the way and become more enhanced. And so even now, and I would imagine a lot of AP systems are like this, that the onboarding process and to help firms or end users come on board is a very streamlined process.
Did you run into any staff resistance?
Not that I remember. No.
They just didn't want to have to be driving around picking up invoices.
Pardon me?
They didn't want to be driving around picking up invoices anymore.
Exactly. Or keying them in or making mistakes. And yeah, they saw the benefit right away. And we're just amazed at it. Don, one thing again, Don mentioned or alluded to earlier was the statement reconciliation. That's another game changer. Anybody who's been in accounts payable and manually reconciled a statement and ticking things off and going back and forth from a report in your ERP system to the statement, it's completely automated. It identifies what's missing, and you can actually email the vendor from within the system and say, I need this invoice, please. They send it. It goes right into the system where it can be reviewed, approved, and entered right away. That one has also been a huge time saver.
Yeah. Don, Liz's case clearly is a great process, right? I mean, she clearly had an easy change management process here. That's not always the case. I mean, sometimes we find there's some resistance among AP staff who've been doing things a certain way for a long time, and they're reluctant to change. Maybe they don't feel like they have the skills they need to use a solution like yours. Give me some tips for overcoming some resistance from AP staff to a new solution like yours.
Yeah, sure. And you're right. Liz's kind of setup is perfect in that she's an advisory service on behalf of the end customer. So you can kind of standardize that. And so, but if you're an individual organization, you do have those legacy processes. And like you said, the staff who may not be comfortable with it, or how is this going to change my job? The reality is it's kind of what I alluded to before. I look at it as a way, and I experienced this as a user myself, even in past generations when I was a buyer of these. It allows you to change your day to day. You become QC, you become a cost analyst, you become an analyst of many kinds as you are going from data entry to data QC. You're looking at the workflows, you're looking at the data, you're finding trends. We found that a lot of AP departments kind of become more analyst functions, and their cost, cost research, and maybe they work even with cost accounting functions. So it's never usually a negative. It's my work changes to a more value add kind of function for my company. And then the end user experience, to Liz's point, like I laughed a lot at the driving around and scanning part. You take that away, your tool becomes a more intelligent desktop. You're looking at a workstation that's not about getting stuff moved from left to right from your inbox to your outbox, and more analytical and prescribed. And as AI becomes even more involved in it, we can find call them the difficult invoices. Oh, who's the expert for that one vendor that always has this problem? Well, we know that rule, and that can go to Liz, and she's the specialist for that. So again, it becomes an analytical, a value-added knowledge worker role versus a production type role. And I think most staffs, when they see that, they become, okay, instead of working in my business, now I'm working on my business. And that's a good transition for most.
Yeah, to all you AP folks out there listening in today who really hate keying invoices, just think if you had to get your car, drive and pick up those invoices that you're now keying. That would really stink. Now, I don't know if there's free lunches involved in this, Liz. You don't have to tell us, but that would be awful. Hey, Don, a lot of AP automation solutions claim to eliminate the types of tasks that Liz has been able to automate. How can I be sure? Are there certain questions I could be asking a prospective technology provider to make sure that their solution will deliver the types of benefits that they're saying they're gonna?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think the first question I would ask almost to myself if I'm that AP organization is, how clean is my data? Do I issue good POs? What is my PO flow? What can I match to? There's an effort that goes into that. AI, we all love AI. We all want to talk about AI, but it's truly not magic. It's based on data. And if that data is broken, that can be a challenge. But I would challenge them, where a great question today is, where is AI in your process? Everyone says AI, but what's truly machine learning? Ask about, things like reinforced learning from human feedback, RLHF. Is it actually learning from your user's behavior, or is it more an older RPA type rule where you're setting a rule and it just is on run? That's something we like in our product, that from the first time you start coding, it's learning patterns. If Liz codes the same invoice to the same GL code 50 times in a row, obviously that's there. But then if she codes the same invoice from that same vendor and she codes it differently, but it's 3 times as high as it normally is, okay, we recognize there is something different about that invoice. And that's why Liz did that. So we're taking the data on the page and Liz's behavior and making a model on that. So I'd certainly ask about the AI, ask about how their capture is done. Capture is rapidly evolving. We've all heard of OCR. One of the things we're proud of is we're a nearly OCR-free model. It's truly AI reading left to right, top to bottom, context like a human would. And that allows them to take that invoice and reference it against contracts. We reference invoices against price catalogs so that we're building a micro language model within our customer's environment to say you can learn from not just what's on the invoice or Liz's behavior, but the contract. The contract might provide some context that allows us to grow this. So those are the things that I think, if I'm asking a vendor, do you have these advanced capabilities that allow us to get as close to that true end-to-end like you're describing, Mark, as they can possibly get?
Yeah, that brings us to our next poll question, which is now displayed on your screen. We want to know, if you could automate one AP task today, what would it be? If you could automate one AP task today, what would it be? Would it be invoice data entry? Would it be approval routing? Would it be vendor payments? Would it be exception handling? Or would it be fraud detection? Which of those AP tasks would you most like to automate today? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. Liz, talk to me about payments for a moment. Now that we've automated the invoice piece, what have we done about actually helping our clients with the payment to suppliers?
So the payment side of things has also been a big enhancement. The system, in lieu of writing manual checks and having to file the checks and mail the checks, we are able to onboard about 90% of vendors through an ACH payment.
90%?
About 90%, yes.
Very good.
We push it. There's a couple sticklers out there, but the majority, once they see the money goes directly into their bank account within 3 business days, they don't have to worry about cashing checks. And another big security piece is the vendor themselves puts their own bank account information into the system. We don't touch it. We don't see it. So there's a nice control in place for that. The process is, we still queue up payments based on due date. So it's not 100% automated, but because, again, restaurants are so cash sensitive, we need to have eyes on it. But then it gets routed. We queue up the payment. It's routed then to the signer of the bank account, who then gets a notification. They then can either pull it up on their phone. They can pull it up on the computer. They can go through, approve it. Once it's approved, they're done. and the payment goes out to the vendor along with remittance. And also the integration on the back end, the integration, then the payment then is connected, links up to the invoices, the open invoices, into the accounting software, and everything flows through. So there's no redundancy in having to enter things in our accounting system. It's all coming through from the AP system.
Yeah, Don, years ago, organizations thought of invoice automation and payments automation as separate initiatives, and typically they do one and eventually get around to the other. But what Liz is describing is a truly seamless type of a process. What's the advantages of approaching things the way she described versus what we might have been doing in the past, or maybe this piecemeal approach, if you will?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for one, just the consolidated technology approach. You're using fewer tools to get the end-to-end process done, and that creates more visibility. As Liz mentioned, any form of payment, check, ACH, wire, V card, any RTP, any of those payments are tied directly to the invoice, so you're seeing that all the way through. We mentioned kind of the statement research earlier. One of the things Liz mentioned is she can email the vendor. A future release of that will email the vendor for you, and so it's going to go pick up. Hey, you inquired about this invoice. It was on your statement. We have it. We paid it on this date. Here's the ACH number, and it cleared to the bank on this date. All of that data coming together into one, so that you can kind of take that, almost that response to vendors out of the AP department entirely when you can get that fully automated. The other big value too, everybody's focused on cash flow. Cash flow, especially in many industries, is king. And so the ability to put your invoice next to payment, next to even working capital tools, gives you the ability. Sometimes you've got leverage on a supplier and you want to slow roll them, kind of hang on to cash. Other times it's in Liz's world, perishables, you don't get to slow roll anybody. You pay for it pretty quickly. But having the whole end-to-end solution all in one place allows you to see, all right, I can take whatever my cash position is and my, sort of my policy on my treasury and maximize it to the extent you can.
We asked our attendees if you could automate one AP task today, what would it be? 40% of our attendees identified invoice data entry. I'm not too surprised by that. 22% of our attendees identified fraud detection. 18% said exception handling, almost a kissing cousin, if you will, of invoice data entry. When you're keying that data, it's inevitable that you're going to have typos and transposed numbers and other types of errors. Liz, what are your lessons learned from all of this?
The big lesson is I wish I did this earlier. Automating, I think I had mentioned before, I don't think I could not run my business if it wasn't for this automation. I couldn't scale my business without this level of automation. And again, as we continue to see improvements with AI and the ways we can automate, it's an easy sell, and it just saves time and allows us as accountants to provide a higher level of service to our clients and not be spending our time on the mundane tasks that we used to.
What's happened with your relationships with clients?
The relationship is we've always had an advisory element to the firm, but now we are able to spend more time and really digging into our clients' businesses. And they see us as such a trusted advisor, and that we're always looking out for their best interest. And the things when I mentioned, cost changes, and that we're looking out for them. And we're an extension of their business as opposed to being their accountant, their vendor. We're true partners with our clients, and they appreciate what we do for them, and they see it. They do see it.
Where do you go from here?
Where do I go from here? We are looking to automate other processes for our clients by using the data that is in Automate in the AP software. So because it's capturing item data and item costs, many of our clients are still doing their physical inventories and creating their physical inventory sheets in a manual process. And that's our next big one, is to be able to come up with an automated solution so they can run a report right out of Automate, be able to go and do their counts, put it into the system possibly, or put it in an Excel spreadsheet, but to save them a lot more time.
Don, I imagine a lot of our attendees are pretty fired up by Liz's story. It's a very impressive case study. What advice would you give to someone who might be just starting their AP automation journey, or maybe looking to refresh their existing technology? You've got decades of experience in this space. What's some sage advice for maximizing your automation investments, no matter where you are in the automation journey?
Yeah, what comes to mind quickly is, if you're mid-market, if you've got an ERP that's, of any size, and you had a partner, some sort of system integrator that's in the partner network for that ERP, a NetSuite or an Intact, something along those lines, reach out to that partner. They can give you a quick look at the landscape, and they're pretty familiar with tools like ours. And there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of levers. So there's many solutions out there, and there's overlap, but not everyone is exactly the same. So I'd start there, and then do the homework. Really understand what your outcomes are. Define those first. I never like to buy technology just by jumping in and listening to salespeople. I want to know what my outcomes are. Some of the listeners today may be, hey, cash flow is king for us. Some of it may be like Liz, we really truly have just a workload problem. Some may have really complex, approval policy and lots of CapEx, or maybe they're investing in assets, So knowing your KPIs, I think, is critical before you start talking to vendors. And that way you can always keep those outcomes in the frame of your goals without getting, kind of dazzled by tools and features and capabilities. Those are great, but you want to keep your goals in mind for sure.
That brings us to the Q&A portion of this webinar. If you haven't already submitted your question for Liz or Don, or if you've thought of another question for Liz or Don, go ahead, use the Q&A tool on your screen to submit your question to me now. We'll answer as many questions as time allows. Don, our first question up from an attendee. They want to know, how are invoice discrepancies handled, price or quantity, for instance? Is there a workflow within the solution?
Yeah, there's really kind of unlimited workflow. We've got a number of straight out of the box, what we call approval policies, that you can use as your grounding kind of framework for how you want exceptions to be handled. And then, depending on the complexity of your business, if you're doing three-way matching and you need something that's a quantity discrepancy to go to a buyer that's in your purchasing group, sure, we can create the workflow for that. If you want to set tolerances, so, automatically match something as long as it's within 10%, or, hey, Mark can approve anything up to $5,000, but above him, we need to move that up a little bit. Really kind of, adapt your fiscal policy. We can create a workflow to that. My advice is people tend to overkill that. Companies think, oh, I need a lot of policy, and Ernst & Young was in here and wrote me this great thing, and they love to send me hours to audit it, but think about what makes sense for your business and get those working well, and use the workflow tools. But yeah, really fully adaptable workflow engine.
Another of our attendees writes, our company processes anywhere between 17 and 21,000 invoices per month. Can your system handle that type of volume?
Certainly can, yeah. So we're SaaS platform at its core. So there are millions, if not billions, of invoices running through the system each month. I wish I should have had that number handy, but it's up there. We have customers. I know of one that's processing around 65,000 invoices a month. I know of another that I think is in the 80K range. So yeah, it scales up really well. We run on AWS, and we have elasticity built into our product all around. So we're scaling up and down as our customers' volume changes. But yeah, pretty much infinitely scalable as we grow and as our customers grow.
I've got a bunch of questions here from Esther and other folks wondering about which ERPs you integrate with. Esther mentions Microsoft Dynamics. I also see Sage here. All right, what's your answer to the eternal ERP integration question?
Sure, it always gets asked, and you could chase integrations for forever. There's just that many ERPs out there. We're focused today on I'll call it upper SMB and mid-market. So we've got QuickBooks integrations. We've got a great integration to the new Intuit Enterprise Suite, which is kind of the upgraded QuickBooks. If you're not familiar with that, it's fairly new. And then in the mid-market, Oracle NetSuite, Sage Intacct, Sage X3, and then the Dynamics Suite as well. We have a lot of customers that are migrating from, either GP or SL or NAV in the Microsoft space to either Dynamics BC or Dynamics F&O. So we support those integrations. And then I would add that we have a rapidly advancing API and a number of system integrators that we work with who can, extend our solution. Or if your company has a good IT department, they can call our very open, very well documented APIs to kind of create custom integrations. If you have a one-off ERP or multiple ERPs where maybe you've acquired a unit and they ran on an old PeopleSoft or something, you can use that API to create what you need and get it out so that you can create I'll call it a custom integration.
Liz, what would be your final piece of advice to attendees who might be considering automating for the first time or refreshing their existing technology?
Don't wait anymore. Time to automate. Time to just dive in and move forward with it.
Especially if you're driving around picking up invoices in your car.
Yes.
Liz and Don, thank you so much for an informative and excellent presentation today. And thank all of you for taking time out of your busy days to join us. On behalf of IOFM, this is Mark Brousseau. Let me hand it back to Jovi.
Thank you, Mark. That is all the time we have for today's program. I just have a few quick housekeeping notes to go over before we officially close out. If you could please fill out the brief evaluation form that will appear on the webinar console shortly. This will help us better serve your needs in future webinars. As a reminder, the on-demand materials will be emailed to everyone within 2 business days. This will include a PDF of the slides as well as a link to the recording of today's presentation. And thank you again to Mark, Liz, and Dawn for an excellent presentation today. And thank you to our attendees for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. This webinar was brought to you by IOFM and sponsored by Automate. Thank you all and have a great day.